There's something I've never told anyone before. Not my family, not my closest friends. And after I say this, I might never work in this industry again. But I don't care anymore. Someone needs to hear the truth. People look at models and see glamour. The perfect outfits, the lights, the cameras, the admiration. They think we live like celebrities. That we're untouchable. They envy us. They want to be us. And that's the biggest joke of all. Because behind the curtain, behind the airbrushed photos and perfectly curated Instagram feeds, is a reality that would make most people sick. A reality that broke me in ways I still can't fully process. And I wish I had known before I got into this. I wish someone had told me the truth before I signed my first contract, before I stepped into my first casting call, before I let them turn me into something that wasn't even human anymore. I was 19 when I got scouted. It felt like a dream. A stranger on the street stopped me, handed me a card, and told me I had the look. Said I could be someone. A name. A face people would recognize. And at that moment, I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He looked professional, had the right connections, the right words. He told me I could travel the world, make more money than I'd ever imagined, have everything I ever wanted. I had no idea that was the beginning of a nightmare. The first thing they don't tell you? You're not a person anymore. You're a product. From the moment you sign that contract, you belong to them. They decide everything: what you wear, how much you weigh, who you talk to, where you live, when you eat. And if you don't play by their rules, you're out. Blacklisted. Replaced. Because there's always another girl waiting in line, someone younger, skinnier, more desperate. At first, it's little things. Your agency calls you at 6 a.m. and tells you there's a last-minute shoot. Doesn't matter if you had plans, if you're exhausted, if you're sick. You show up, or you don't work again. Then, they start adjusting you. Your hair is too long, cut it. Your face isn't sharp enough, lose weight. Your body isn't toned enough, fix it. They don't care how. Pills, starvation, surgery, just make it happen. And then, the real game begins. Do you know how much a new model actually makes? Nothing. Or worse, she starts in debt. Because the agency doesn't just represent you, they own you. The flights, the apartments, the photo shoots, the endless list of fees they never explain, all of it gets added to your bill. You think you're making money, but at the end of the month, you're in the red. They tell you it's normal. That it'll get better. That once you book that one big job, everything will change. That job never comes. Instead, you take whatever you can get. You do the 14-hour unpaid shoots, hoping for exposure. You go to the parties they tell you to, even when you don't want to. You smile at the men you're supposed to smile at. And you learn, very quickly, that saying no is not an option. Some girls fight back. I did, in the beginning. But you only have to get punished once to understand how this world really works. One wrong move, and suddenly, no one wants to book you. Your agent stops taking your calls. Your emails go unanswered. The brands that used to be interested in you suddenly go in another direction. And just like that, your career is over before it even started. I've seen girls get sent on jobs that weren't jobs at all. I've seen girls come back from meetings in hotel rooms, shaking, crying, refusing to say what happened. I've seen girls disappear. One day they're everywhere, the next they're gone. And no one asks questions. Because everyone knows the answer. But the worst part? You start to believe it's normal. That this is just the price you pay. That this is what it takes to be successful. And maybe, if I had never seen what I saw that night, I would have kept believing it too. Maybe I would have kept my mouth shut, played the game, done what I was told. But I did see it. And once you see something like that, there's no going back. I haven't told this story before. I don't even know if I should be telling it now. But I can't keep pretending. People deserve to know the truth. Girls need to know what they're really walking into before they chase this dream. Because if I had known, I would have run. And maybe it's too late for me, but it's not too late for someone else. Next time, I'll tell you exactly how they trap you. How they break you down, piece by piece, until there's nothing left. Because that's the part no one talks about. That's the part that keeps me up at night. But for now, just know this: everything you think you know about the modeling industry is a lie. And I'm finally ready to tell you why. I wasn't always this person. I wasn't always the girl who could sit here and tell you the truth about what really happens behind the scenes. Once, I was just normal. A girl with dreams, with a family who loved her, with a life that felt safe, predictable, full of possibilities. If I close my eyes, I can still see her, the girl I used to be. I grew up in a small town, one of those places where everyone knows everyone, where people smile at you in the grocery store, where the biggest drama was who won prom queen. My parents weren't rich, but they worked hard. My dad fixed cars. My mom worked at a local diner. They wanted me to have a better life than they did, and they always told me I could do anything if I worked for it. I believed them. I was never the prettiest girl in school. Not in the way you think, at least. I wasn't the popular cheerleader, the one every guy wanted. I was tall, awkward, too skinny for my own good. People told me I looked different. Sometimes they meant it as a compliment. Sometimes they didn't. But I didn't care. I had plans. I was going to college. I was going to make something of myself. Modeling? That was never part of the plan. But then, everything changed. I still remember the exact day. The exact moment. I was walking downtown, just killing time before meeting a friend for coffee. It was hot, and I had tied my hair up in a messy bun. I wasn't wearing anything special, just jeans and an old t-shirt. I wasn't thinking about how I looked. But then, he saw me. The man who changed everything. He was tall, well-dressed, confident in that effortless way that made you trust him without knowing why. He walked right up to me, handed me a card, and said the words that would replay in my head for years to come. "You have something special." I should have walked away. I should have laughed it off, thrown the card in the trash. But I didn't. Because for the first time in my life, someone was telling me I could be something more. That I wasn't just another girl in a small town, destined for an ordinary life. And that feeling? That little spark of excitement, of hope? That's how they get you. I went home that night and Googled his name. He was real. A legitimate scout for a well-known agency. I read about the models he had discovered, the careers he had launched. It all seemed so easy. Like a golden ticket had been handed to me, and all I had to do was take it. My parents were skeptical. My mom worried it was a scam. My dad didn't like the idea of me moving to a big city all alone. But I convinced them. Told them it was just a meeting. Just to see. Just to find out what could be. I still remember packing my bag for that first trip. I only planned to be gone for a few days. A week at most. I took my favorite sweater, a notebook, a book I never ended up reading. I told myself that if it didn't feel right, I'd come home. That I wasn't committing to anything. I had no idea that I was about to step into a world I wouldn't recognize. The agency put me up in a model apartment, just a small, two-bedroom place crammed with 4 other girls. They were all beautiful. Effortlessly perfect in that way I wasn't. They had the right clothes, the right posture, the right level of confidence. I felt like an outsider the second I walked in. The first few days were a blur. Castings, test shoots, meetings. They told me I had potential. They told me I had the right look. But I needed to make a few changes. Lose a little weight. Not much, just 5 pounds. Walk a little differently. Less like a girl from nowhere, more like someone important. They said it casually, like it wasn't a big deal. And I listened. Because when everyone around you says the same thing, you start to believe them. At night, I lay awake in my tiny bunk bed, listening to the other girls whisper about their jobs, their clients, their secrets. They made it sound so normal. The skipped meals, the strange meetings, the late-night favors for agents and photographers. They laughed about it, shrugged it off. I told myself I wouldn't be like them. That I would keep my head down, do my jobs, and leave before the industry could change me. I was wrong. Because the thing about this world is, you don't even realize it's swallowing you until it's too late. And before I knew it, I was drowning. The first time I felt like something was off, I ignored it. That's what you do in this industry, you ignore things. The uneasy feelings, the little red flags, the warnings in the back of your head. You tell yourself you're just overthinking, that you're being paranoid. And by the time you realize you weren't, it's too late. I had been in the city for about 2 weeks when I booked my first real job. Not a test shoot, not a casting, but an actual paid job. Or at least, that's what they told me. My agent called me late at night, past midnight, which I thought was strange, but I picked up anyway. "Good news," he said, his voice too smooth, too practiced. "You're booked for tomorrow. Big client. Exclusive shoot. They're paying well, so be on your best behavior." Best behavior. I should have asked what he meant by that. I didn't. Instead, I said thank you, hung up the phone, and lay awake in bed, my heart pounding with excitement. This was what I had been waiting for. The moment when everything would start falling into place. The next morning, a black car picked me up outside the model apartment. That was the first thing that felt off. Usually, you take yourself to shoots, public transport, and Uber if you're lucky. But this time, there was a car. A driver. No explanation. I told myself it was just a high-end client. That it was normal. It wasn't. The ride was long, longer than I expected. We left the city, drove past the places I recognized, past the neighborhoods I had seen before. The farther we went, the more I felt that gnawing feeling in my stomach, that instinct that something wasn't right. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. The driver didn't look at me. "You'll see," he said. I should have told him to stop the car. I should have called my agent, demanded answers. But I didn't, because I didn't want to seem difficult. That's another thing they drill into your head from day one. Never be difficult. Difficult girls don't get jobs. Difficult girls don't last. When we finally arrived, I expected a studio, a warehouse, something professional. Instead, it was a house, huge, expensive-looking, but eerily quiet. There were no crew members running around, no racks of clothes, no flashing lights. Just a man waiting by the door, smiling too much. I recognized him. Not by name, but by face. He was one of those industry men, the kind with too much money, too many connections. The kind that never seemed to have a real job, but always had models at their side. I stepped out of the car, suddenly aware of how alone I was. No other models, no photographers. Just me, the driver, and this man I didn't know. He reached out, took my hand like we were old friends. "You must be the new girl," he said. I forced a smile. "Where's the shoot?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He laughed. "We'll get to that," he said. "Come inside." And that was the moment. The first real moment where I knew something is wrong. But I went inside anyway. Because when you're a model, when you're young and new and desperate, you tell yourself that these things are normal. That this is just how it works. I had no idea how wrong I was. I stepped inside. The air was too still, too quiet. A house like this, massive, luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive furniture, should have felt grand, impressive. But instead, it felt staged. Like something was missing. The man led me through the hallway, his hand resting lightly on my lower back. A gesture that was supposed to seem friendly. Protective even. But it wasn't. It was possessive. A subtle reminder of who was in control. I told myself not to overthink it. The other girls had warned me about this kind of thing. Rich men like to feel important, they had said with knowing smiles. Just play along. But there were no other girls here. That was the first real problem. I had been to enough castings and shoots to know how things worked. There were always people, stylists, makeup artists, assistants bustling around, photographers setting up lights. Even the exclusive, high-end jobs had a team. There was always noise, movement. But this place was silent. No racks of clothing, no cameras, no sign of any production equipment. I hesitated at the threshold of what looked like a living room, sleek, modern, full of expensive things. The kind of place that was designed to impress, but never actually lived in. "Have a seat," the man said, gesturing to a white leather couch. I sat. Not because I wanted to, but because I felt like I had to. He poured himself a drink from a glass decanter on the table, offered me one. I shook my head. He smiled. Nervous? I forced a laugh. I thought there would be a crew here. Oh, they'll be here, he said easily. You're early. That's a good thing. Means we get to talk first. Another red flag. Models don't talk to clients. Not like this. Maybe a few words exchanged on set, small talk while a makeup artist worked, but nothing more. We were mannequins. Faces. Bodies. We weren't meant to be personal. I shifted slightly, glancing around. There were no signs that anyone else was coming. Something about the way he was watching me made my skin crawl. I pulled out my phone. A reflex. A safety net. I opened my messages, pretending to check something, but really, I was trying to get my bearings. To figure out what my exit strategy was. You won't get service here, he said smoothly, sipping his drink. It's a bit remote. My stomach tightened. Another thing that wasn't right. Even in big houses, in expensive areas, you could usually get a signal. But when I looked down, he was right. No bars. No Wi-Fi. I forced another smile. Oh, that's different. He set his glass down and leaned forward slightly. You're new to all this, aren't you? I shrugged. A little. Still figuring things out. He studied me for a moment, then nodded as if he had decided something. That's good. Means you don't have bad habits yet. Before I could ask what he meant, another man entered the room. I hadn't even heard the door open. He was older. Thinner. His suit was a little too sharp, his eyes a little too cold. He barely looked at me as he crossed the room and sat down in a chair opposite us. This her? He asked. She's got potential, the first man said. Potential for what? Something in my brain screamed at me to leave. To stand up, to make an excuse, to get out. But I didn't. Because I still didn't understand. Because I was still trying to convince myself that this was normal. That was my mistake. Because in this industry, by the time you realize what's happening, it's already too late. The older man finally looked at me. Not in the way photographers or casting directors did, analyzing my features, assessing my look. This was different. You've done private work before? He asked. My mouth went dry. What do you mean? Another glance between the two men. A silent conversation. She's fresh, the first one said, almost amused. Doesn't know the game yet. The older man nodded slightly, as if that settled something. Then, he stood up. Let's start with some test shots. Finally, I stood up too. I should probably check in with my agent first. There was a pause. A beat too long. Then, the first man smiled again. Of course. But let's at least get you comfortable first. No pressure. Everything in my body screamed that there was pressure. I forced a nod, gripping my phone even though I knew it was useless. I need a minute, I said, stepping toward the hallway. Neither of them stopped me, but I knew, as I turned that corner, that if I didn't find a way out right now, I might not get another chance. This was the moment. The moment I realized that this world wasn't what I thought it was. In the next part, I'll tell you exactly how I got out of that house and what I learned about the people who bring girls like me here. Because this wasn't just a job. And I wasn't just a model anymore. I walked down the hallway, my hands shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I had to move. Had to get out. The house was too quiet. No voices. No movement. Just the soft hum of air conditioning and the sound of my own footsteps against the polished floor. I glanced behind me. They weren't following. Not yet. I needed to find the front door. My way out. But as I turned a corner, I saw something that stopped me cold. A door, slightly open. And inside. I shouldn't have looked. But I did. The room was dimly lit. Just enough for me to make out what was inside. A vanity mirror, ringed with round, glowing bulbs. A chair in front of it. And in that chair, a girl. She was slumped forward, her long dark hair covering most of her face. She wasn't moving. A sick feeling rose in my throat. "Hello?" I whispered. "Nothing." I stepped inside. Closer, just enough to see the bruises on her arms, the way her dress was slightly torn, the empty, hollow look in her half-open eyes. I felt my stomach drop. She looked young, younger than me, and she wasn't asleep. She was unconscious. Or worse. I took a shaky step back, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I needed to leave. Now. And then I heard voices. Not from the room I had just left, but from somewhere else. Somewhere down the hall. Men's voices. Laughing. Talking casually like nothing was wrong. Like this was normal. I turned, my body moving before my brain could even catch up, and hurried back toward the main entrance. But as I reached the living room, I stopped short. The first man, the one who had brought me here, was standing there, blocking the door. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. "Going somewhere?" he asked. I forced myself to stay calm, to breathe, to act like I wasn't panicking. I just needed some air, I said, gripping my phone tighter, even though I knew it was useless. His smile was slow, deliberate. "You're acting nervous." I shook my head. "No, I'm fine. Behind him, I saw the second man enter the room. The older one. The one who had asked if I'd done private work before. He was watching me now, the way a predator watches prey. And suddenly, it all clicked. This wasn't a job. This was never a job. I wasn't here for a photo shoot. I was here for them. I felt a cold sweat break out over my skin. My heart was hammering so loudly I thought they could hear it. I had to get out. Now. I forced a smile, pretending I wasn't about to collapse from fear. I think there's been a misunderstanding. My agent didn't tell me much about this job, and The older man raised an eyebrow. "Your agent knows exactly what this is." The words hit me like a slap. My agent. The one who had called me, who had told me to be on my best behavior. He knew. He sent me here. I felt something inside me shatter. Because in that moment, I understood. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. This was a system. A machine. A well-oiled operation designed to find girls like me, young, naive, eager to prove themselves, and pull us into something we never agreed to. And now I was trapped in it. I took a slow step back. The first man's smile didn't waver. "You're overthinking," he said, his tone light, like this was all just a misunderstanding. "No one's forcing you to do anything." But that was the lie, wasn't it? Because when they take away your choices, when yes is the only acceptable answer, that's not freedom. That's control. And I wasn't going to let them control me. Not like they had done to that girl in the other room. So I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. I turned and sprinted toward the nearest hallway, my only thought being get away, get out, don't let them stop you. I heard them yell behind me, their voices sharp, angry. Footsteps pounded against the floor. But I didn't stop. Because I knew, if they caught me, if they got their hands on me, I wasn't leaving this house. Not the way I came in. And I wasn't going to let that happen. Not to me. Not tonight. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just moved. The hallway blurred as I sprinted down it, my only thought, find a way out. Don't let them catch you. I could hear them behind me, their footsteps heavy, fast. They weren't trying to calm me down anymore. Weren't pretending this was all a misunderstanding. Now, they were hunting me. I turned a corner too fast, my shoulder slamming into the wall. Pain shot through me, but I didn't stop. My eyes darted wildly, searching a door, a window, anything. There. At the end of the hallway, I saw a doorway slightly open. A glimmer of hope. I lunged for it, shoving it wide. And stopped dead. It wasn't an exit. It was a bedroom. Lavish. Perfect. Designed with careful precision. A massive bed with silk sheets. Dim, soft lighting. A vanity mirror. A closet door slightly ajar, revealing expensive designer dresses inside. It looked like a hotel suite, but not the kind you stayed in voluntarily. I took a shaky step back, my breath catching in my throat, because suddenly I understood. This wasn't just a house. It was a place, a setup, a space where girls were brought, dressed up and prepared. Prepared for men like them. This was where it happened. My stomach twisted, bile rising in my throat. I needed to get out of here. I turned and slammed straight into him. The older man, the one who had barely spoken before. His grip was like iron, fingers digging into my arm as he yanked me back into the room. "Where do you think you're going?" he hissed. I struggled, tried to wrench myself free, but he was too strong. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out everything else. I was trapped. Panic clawed at my chest, but somewhere deep inside me, something snapped. Something raw and desperate. I wasn't going to let this happen. I kicked hard. My knee slammed into his stomach. He grunted, his grip loosening just enough for me to twist away. I didn't stop to see if he had recovered. I bolted, sprinting back down the hall, ignoring the burn in my legs, the terror clawing at my ribs. The voices behind me were louder now, angrier. I saw a door ahead, a heavy wooden one with a lock. It wasn't the front door, but it was something. I grabbed the handle, threw my weight against it. Locked. No. My hands fumbled, shaking. I yanked, twisted, praying it would give. Then I heard them. Close. Too close. I turned wildly, searching, and my eyes landed on a small decorative table. A vase perched on top, delicate and fragile. I grabbed it and smashed it against the doorknob. Once, twice. The third time, the lock gave. I yanked the door open, stumbled into what looked like an office. My vision was swimming, my breath ragged. I slammed the door shut behind me, pressing my back against it, forcing my body to stop shaking long enough to think. They were coming. I could hear them running, shouting. I needed to hide. I scanned the room frantically. A desk, a bookshelf, a heavy leather chair, and then a window. My only chance. I ran to it, yanked at the latch. It wouldn't budge. I heard the doorknob rattle behind me. No time. I grabbed the nearest thing, a paperweight, and smashed it against the glass. The window shattered, shards spraying outward. Cold air rushed in. Voices roared behind me. I didn't think. I climbed onto the desk, swung one leg over the windowsill, and jumped. The fall wasn't long, but when I hit the ground, pain exploded through my ankle. I bit back a cry, pushing myself up, forcing my body to move. I was outside. I was out, but I wasn't safe yet. I stumbled forward, my body screaming in protest. The house was surrounded by high walls, a driveway leading out to the road. I needed to get to the gate. Behind me, I heard them. Shouting. They were coming. And then, headlights. A car was pulling up to the gate. I didn't think. I ran toward it, waving my arms frantically. Help! Please, help me. The car slowed. The driver, a middle-aged man, rolled down his window, his face a mix of confusion and alarm. What's going on? Behind me, I heard the front door of the house burst open. I didn't turn around. They're trying to, I gasped. Please, just take me anywhere. The man hesitated. Just for a second. But that second felt like forever. Then he unlocked the door. I yanked it open, threw myself inside. And as we sped away, I looked back. The two men were standing at the entrance of the house, watching. Not running. Not chasing. Just watching. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't over. Because men like them? They never let their property escape. I climbed out of the window, scrambling down the fire escape so fast I didn't even feel the metal scraping against my knees, didn't register the sting on my palms as I grabbed onto the cold bars. Fear was the only thing driving me forward. I knew that if they caught me, it was over. I hit the ground hard, nearly falling, but I forced myself to keep running, pushing into the night, into the city, into the crowd of people who had no idea what I was running from. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would burst. My breath was ragged, my lungs burning. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I couldn't go home. They knew where I lived. They knew everything about me. Calling the police was useless. What would I even say? That I had been lured into a trap but managed to escape? That I had seen a girl in that house, but I had no idea who she was, no proof of what they had done to her? The police wouldn't believe me. They never believed girls like me. These men had power, money, connections. They knew exactly how to do this without leaving a trace. I reached a hotel and stepped inside, trying to act normal, like I wasn't seconds away from falling apart. The lobby was bright, security cameras in every corner. A safe place, a temporary shield. I sank into a chair in the corner, my hands shaking. I was safe, but it didn't mean I had one. The worst was yet to come. My phone was silent. I had texted my agent, demanding answers, but there was no reply. I already knew what that meant. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. He had sent me there on purpose. I was never supposed to be a model. I was something else. And I wasn't the first. I tried to calm myself down, but the only thing I could think about was her, the girl in the chair. Her dark hair, the lifeless stare in her eyes, the marks on her arms. I didn't know if she was still alive. I didn't know what happened to her after I ran. I left her there. I chose myself. And now that choice burned inside me like fire. I opened my phone and searched for anyone who could help. Then, I remembered her. Sasha, a former model, older than me, who had disappeared from the industry suddenly, only to resurface with an anonymous blog exposing the dark side of it all. She never named names, never put herself directly in danger, but she knew things. And people listened. I sent her a message. I told her I saw something bad, that I needed help, that they were already looking for me. Her response came almost instantly. She told me to leave my apartment immediately, that they don't just let girls walk away, that I had no idea how deep this went. I already knew. I had seen their faces when I ran. They weren't angry. They weren't shouting. They just watched. And that was the scariest part. Sasha told me I had a choice. I could disappear, hide, forget everything, or I could talk. But if I talked, I had to be ready for what came next. Because these men never lose. The ones who talked before, they were gone. I stared at my hands, still shaking. I wasn't ready to fight. I just wanted to survive. I decided to run. A new city, a new name, a new life. But could I really run from men who had my information, who saw girls like me as nothing more than inventory? Could I disappear when I was just one name on a long list of others who came before me? I knew this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. That night, I left everything behind. I threw away my SIM card, erased every contact, left all my belongings except for a single backpack. And as I walked down that street, knowing I would never be able to return to my old life, I realized one thing. They thought I would stay silent, like all the others. But I wouldn't, because I knew the truth. And I knew the one thing they feared most was the world knowing it too. I disappeared. I became no one. For the first few days, I barely slept. I moved from one cheap motel to another, paying in cash, never staying too long in one place. Every time I walked outside, I felt like someone was watching. Every time I heard footsteps behind me, I thought it was them. My body never stopped shaking. My mind never stopped replaying that night. I had no plan, no destination, just the overwhelming need to stay ahead of them. But the problem with running is that you can never outrun what's inside your head. And inside mine, all I saw was her. The girl in that house. The bruises on her arms. The way she never even flinched when I called out to her. How many others had sat in that chair before her? How many more would? The guilt ate at me. I had escaped, but I had left her behind. I had left them all behind. And for what? To keep my head down? To pretend this never happened? To live a life where I was constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the day they found me? I kept thinking back to what Sasha had told me. That I wasn't the first. that I wouldn't be the last. She had been through this before, and she had survived. But she was right about one thing: the girls who talk don't last long. I stayed silent for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of running, hiding, trying to figure out what I was supposed to do next. I avoided the news, avoided social media, avoided anything that could remind me of who I used to be. But one night, in another nameless hotel room, I made the mistake of searching my name. And that's when I saw it. A post from my agency. Short, cold, professional. We regret to announce that one of our models, my name, has chosen to step away from the industry. We wish her the best in her future endeavors. Just like that. As if I had chosen to walk away. As if they hadn't tried to sell me to the highest bidder. As if they hadn't hunted me down, pounded on my door, waited for me to break. I kept scrolling. There was nothing else. No questions. No investigations. No news articles about the house, the men, the girl I left behind. Nothing. It was as if it had never happened. And that's when I realized, this is how they win. They don't need to silence you. They don't need to hurt you. They just make sure no one listens. They wipe you away like you were never there. I felt sick. I thought about the other girls. The ones who had retired early. The ones who had moved on. The ones who had just disappeared. How many of them had run like me? How many of them had tried to speak? How many of them had been erased before they could? And if I didn't do something, how long before I was just another forgotten name? I made my decision that night. I didn't know if it was the right one. I still don't. I reached out to Sasha again. I told her I was ready to talk. She warned me, if I did this, there was no turning back. If I spoke up, they would come for me. Not with threats, not with violence. They would take my name, my reputation, my credibility. They would make me look crazy, desperate, unstable. They would make the world believe I was lying. Because that's how this industry works. If you disappear quietly, they let you go. If you try to expose them, they destroy you. I told her I didn't care. She helped me get in touch with a journalist, someone who had been trying to dig into the dark side of the industry for years, but never had enough proof. I told him everything. The house, the men, the way my agent handed me over like a business transaction. He listened. He took notes. He asked if I had any evidence. I didn't. No photos. No recordings. Just my word against theirs. And I already knew how that would play out. A few weeks later, an article came out. Not a full expose. Not a front-page scandal. Just a short piece about concerning allegations in the modeling world. A vague, watered-down version of the truth. No names. No real consequences. And just as Sasha warned me, the response was exactly what they wanted it to be. She's lying. She's just bitter because she didn't make it. If this were true, she'd have proof. She's crazy. Delusional. Another girl trying to blame others for her own failures. And just like that, I was erased. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a survivor. I was just a failed model looking for attention. My agency never even responded. They didn't have to. Because no one believed me. That was the hardest part. Not the fear. Not the running. Not the nights spent wondering if they would find me. The hardest part was knowing the truth and realizing the world didn't want to hear it. But I'm still here. And I'm still talking. Because they might have erased my career. They might have taken my reputation. But they haven't taken my voice. And if even one girl hears this and thinks twice before stepping into this world, then maybe, just maybe, it was all worth it. I thought that once I told my story, something would change. That people would wake up. That someone, somewhere, would listen and say, this isn't right. We need to stop this. But the world doesn't work like that. I learned that the hard way. After the article came out, everything got quieter. Too quiet. The threats didn't come in the way I expected. No one showed up at my door with warnings. No mysterious cars followed me. No one called me in the middle of the night. Instead, it was a slow suffocation. My name disappeared from agency records. My face vanished from industry websites. I reached out to people I used to know, models, photographers, even the ones I thought were my friends, and they either ignored me or told me, in soft, pitying voices, that they couldn't be associated with me. I wasn't blacklisted. I was erased. That was the real power these people had. They didn't need to threaten me. They just made sure I no longer existed. I moved to a different city, changed my phone number, deleted all traces of my old life. For a while, I tried to pretend that none of it had happened, that I was just a normal girl again, working meaningless jobs, paying rent, blending in. But I couldn't, because even when I was gone, they were still there. The modeling industry didn't change. The same agencies still existed. The same men still ran everything. The same machine kept running, swallowing up new girls, feeding them the same lies. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that there was another girl sitting in a model apartment right now, checking her phone, waiting for her big break, completely unaware of what was coming. I thought about reaching out, warning them, telling them what I knew. But what would I say? Run. It's not what you think. Would they believe me? Would I have believed me back when I was 19 and naive and thought the world worked the way it was supposed to? The truth is, people don't want to believe the ugly parts of reality. They want the fantasy. They want the illusion of glamour, of success, of effortless beauty. The world loves to idolize models, to envy them, to pick apart their flaws. But no one wants to hear what happens behind closed doors. The girls who don't make it, the ones who disappear, the ones who are chewed up and spat out, it's easier to pretend they never existed. I started having nightmares about the house, about the girl in the chair. I kept wondering, was she still alive? Did someone save her? Or was she just another ghost in a system designed to erase people like us? I'll never know the answer. That's the part that haunts me the most. Sometimes, I think about what would have happened if I had stayed. If I had never run. If I had played along, smiled at the right people, done what was expected of me. I would have had money. I would have had success. I would have been one of those girls on magazine covers, in fashion campaigns, in glossy Instagram photos. But I also know what I would have lost. Myself. Because no one gets out of that world without giving up something. Your body. Your dignity. Your silence. And once they own a piece of you, they own all of you. I used to blame myself for leaving the girl behind, for not saving her. But I've come to accept something. I wasn't the one who failed her. The system did. The men in power did. The agencies that protected them did. The people who looked the other way, who called it just business, who told themselves the girls knew what they were signing up for. They were the ones who failed her. And I refuse to carry the weight of their wrongs anymore. I don't know if speaking out made a difference. Maybe it didn't. Maybe nothing will ever change. Maybe in 10 years, there will still be girls walking into casting calls, signing contracts they don't understand, thinking they're stepping into a dream when they're really stepping into a nightmare. But if even one person hears this and thinks twice before chasing this illusion, then maybe it wasn't for nothing. Because the biggest lie they ever told us was that we had no choice. And the truth is, we always do. I've told you everything. Every detail. Every moment that still keeps me up at night. Every choice I had to make, whether to run, whether to speak, whether to let them erase me. And now, after all of it, I only have one question left. Did it even matter? I want to believe that it did. That telling this story means something. That by speaking out, I've taken back a little of what they tried to take from me. But the truth is, I don't know. The system still exists. The same agencies still recruit new faces, selling them the same dream. The same men still sit at the top, untouched, untouchable. And somewhere, right now, another girl is stepping into a casting call, thinking she's about to have the opportunity of a lifetime. I don't know if she'll hear this before it's too late. And maybe that's the part that haunts me the most. For the longest time, I thought that if I just exposed the truth, something would change. But now, I understand that it's not that simple. People don't want to hear things that force them to question their world. They want the fantasy. They want to believe that the industry is just about beauty and talent, that success is earned, that the models they idolize are living a life they can only dream of. No one wants to believe that behind the glamour is something darker. That behind the perfect photos are girls too scared to speak. That behind every missing name is a truth too dangerous to say out loud. But that's why I'm still talking. Because even if most people don't want to hear it, someone does. Maybe you do. Maybe you've seen the signs before. Maybe you've felt that gut instinct that something wasn't right. Maybe you know someone who went into this industry, someone who changed, someone who disappeared. Or maybe you've been through something like this yourself, in modeling or somewhere else, a situation where you realized too late that the people you trusted only saw you as something to use. If you have, I want you to know something. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And it's not your fault. For a long time, I blamed myself. I thought I was foolish for not seeing it earlier, for falling for the illusion, for not fighting back harder. But I realize now that's exactly what they want. They want you to believe it was your mistake, that you could have prevented it, that you weren't strong enough, smart enough, careful enough. But that's a lie, because the truth is, the system is built to trap you before you even know what's happening. It's designed to make you feel powerless, to make you believe there's no way out. And for a long time, I believed that. But I don't anymore. I don't know what comes next for me. I don't know if my story will make a difference, or if the people who erased me will try again. But I do know this, I will never stay silent again. Because silence is what they want. It's what lets them keep doing this. And the only way anything ever changes is if people refuse to shut up. So if this story made you think, if it made you question what you thought you knew, I want to hear from you. Maybe you've seen something you didn't understand before. Maybe you've been in a situation where you felt powerless. Maybe you just have thoughts, opinions, questions. Tell me. Because this isn't just my story. This is happening everywhere. And sometimes one voice, one story, is all it takes to make someone see the truth. If you've ever felt like you had no one to talk to, no one who would believe you, let this be the place where you're heard. Leave a comment. Share this. Let's make them listen. Because they win when we stay quiet. And I won't be quiet anymore.